Admiral Kethavar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Glory, watching the holographic display with mild curiosity. Three strange ships hung motionless in the void at the edge of Imperial space, their designs unlike anything in the Galactic database. "Analysis report, Commander," he ordered, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. Commander Yextal consulted her datapad, her four eyes blinking in sequence. "The vessels appear to be constructed from simple metal alloys, Admiral. Primitive fusion reactors provide power. We detect no quantum field generators, no hyperspace drives, and no antimatter cores. Most curious of all, they appear to be using chemical rockets for maneuvering." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in amusement. In his 3 centuries of service to the Zeridian Empire, he had never encountered ships so backward. Even the most primitive worlds they had conquered possessed at least basic energy shields and plasma drives. What civilization builds ships from raw metal? He mused aloud. Are they refugees from some forgotten colony world? "Unknown, Admiral. Our communications officer has been attempting contact for the past hour. They respond, but their language is not in our databases." Put their leader on screen. The main display flickered, revealing a being that looked surprisingly similar to several species in the Empire. Though with notably pale skin and strange hair growing from its head, the creature wore a simple blue uniform with incomprehensible symbols. "Greetings," the alien said through the universal translator. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Vessel Determination. You have entered the Sol Defense Perimeter. Please state your intentions." Kethavar blinked all 4 eyes in surprise. This primitive was claiming territory? "I am Admiral Kethavar of the Zeridian Imperial Fleet. You will stand down immediately and prepare to be escorted to the nearest Imperial processing station." The human tilted her head, and something strange happened. The corners of her mouth curved upward, and she made a series of rhythmic sounds that the translator struggled to interpret. Finally, it settled on amused vocalization and laughter. "I'm sorry," the human said, still making those odd sounds. "Did you just try to arrest us?" Kethavar's scales rippled with irritation. "This is not a request, primitive. You are trespassing in Imperial space. Submit now or face the consequences." The human's laughter grew louder. Through the communication link, similar sounds could be heard from other crew members in the background. "Oh, this is rich. Hey, Tom, you need to hear this. These guys think they own this part of space." A second human voice joined the conversation. "Really, that's adorable. Should we tell them about the mining rights we've had here for the past 200 years? Nah, let's see how far this goes first." Kethavar felt his combat glands releasing stress hormones. These beings were either incredibly brave or remarkably stupid. "You dare mock the Imperial fleet? We command the might of 1,000 worlds." 1,000 worlds? The human captain's expression became even more amused. "Wow, that sounds like a lot. How many people is that, roughly?" "Over 6 trillion sentient beings bow before Imperial authority?" The humans exchanged glances and their laughter intensified. 6 trillion? That's cute. Earth alone has 12 billion, and we've got colonies on about 800 worlds now. But hey, good for you guys. Commander Yextal leaned close to Kethavar's ear. "Admiral, their math appears incorrect. 12 billion on one world is impossible without massive ecological collapse." "These primitives are clearly lying," Kethavar decided. "Captain Chen, you will cease this deception immediately. No world can support such a population." "Oh, you sweet summer child," the human replied, patting something off-screen. "Friday, show them the population density maps for Greater Tokyo, Mumbai, and Neo-Lagos." The communication screen split, displaying images that made Kethavar's blood freeze. Massive cities stretched beyond the horizon, with towers reaching into the clouds. Billions of beings moved through transportation networks that defied comprehension. This is fabricated," he stammered. "Friday, show them the live feed from Luna City." The screen shifted to show a gleaming metropolis built inside what appeared to be a moon. Millions of lights twinkled in the artificial atmosphere, while massive ships moved cargo through organized traffic patterns. "That's just our moon," Captain Chen explained casually. "We've got bigger cities on Mars, Europa, and Titan. Oh, and about those fusion reactors you detected? Those are just our maneuvering thrusters. We didn't want to scare you by powering up the main drives." Kethavar felt dizzy. "Impossible. Our sensors would have detected such massive energy signatures." "Your sensors are adorable," another human voice chimed in. "They're working on principles we figured out about 300 years ago. We've been watching your little empire expand for decades, by the way. Very cute how you think you discovered hyperspace. We are the masters of faster-than-light travel," Kethavar protested. The humans erupted in fresh laughter. Hyperspace. Seriously? You guys are still using hyperspace? That's like using a horse and buggy when everyone else has hover cars. Captain Chen wiped her eyes. Sorry, Admiral. We don't mean to be rude, but hyperspace is so inefficient. It takes you weeks to travel between systems, right? We can do the same trip in about 6 hours. That violates the fundamental laws of physics. Your laws of physics, maybe. Look, this has been fun, but we really do need you to move along. We're running some delicate gravitational measurements in this system, and your ships are throwing off our readings. Kethvar felt his world crumbling. These beings spoke of impossible technologies as casually as discussing the weather. Their ships, which appeared primitive, somehow housed populations larger than entire imperial sectors. You claim to have been watching the Empire expand? Oh yeah, for about 2 centuries now. We keep having debates in the Senate about whether we should make contact, but most people think you're not ready yet. No offense, but you're still fighting wars with plasma cannons and kinetic missiles. It's kind of like watching children play with toy swords. The Admiral's aide, Lieutenant Corvex, whispered urgently in his ear. Sir, our deep space scanners are detecting massive energy signatures throughout this system. Structures that shouldn't be possible. The readings suggest artificial gravity wells, controlled stellar engineering, and power outputs that exceed theoretical maximums. Kethvar stared at the human captain, who continued smiling pleasantly. What are you? We're humans, she replied simply. We're from Earth, 3rd planet from that yellow star you're staring at. Nice little world, though we've had to do some climate management over the centuries. Climate management? Weather control, atmospheric composition adjustment, ocean current regulation, standard terraforming stuff. We learned it by practicing on Venus and Mars first. Venus was a real challenge, but now it's got some lovely resort cities in the cloud layers. The Admiral felt his knees weaken. These beings spoke of reshaping entire worlds as casually as landscaping a garden. And you've been watching us. Well, someone has to keep an eye on the neighborhood. The galaxy's a dangerous place, Admiral. Lots of nasty things lurking in dark matter clouds and rogue dimensions. But don't worry, we've got it handled. We've got it handled, Kethvar repeated numbly. Sure. The Galactic Protection Service has been keeping the really scary stuff away from developing civilizations for about 1,000 years now. Your empire's actually doing pretty well, all things considered. You've only had to deal with 3 attempted invasions from outside the galaxy, and you never even knew about them. The communication ended abruptly, leaving the Imperial bridge in stunned silence. Kethvar stared at the empty screen, his mind reeling with implications that stretched far beyond anything he had ever imagined. Admiral Kethvar paced the length of his bridge, his claws clicking against the metal floor. The conversation with the humans had ended 3 hours ago, but his mind still struggled to process what he had witnessed. Sir? Commander Yextal approached cautiously. The Fleet Council is demanding an immediate report. They want to know why we haven't proceeded with standard first contact protocols. Kethvar stopped pacing and stared at the tactical display where 3 human ships waited patiently in space. Their energy signatures remained impossibly low, showing only the basic fusion reactors his sensors had originally detected. They're hiding their true capabilities, he muttered. Those displays of massive cities and impossible populations must be sophisticated illusions. Sir? Think about it, Commander. If these humans possessed such advanced technology, why would they build ships from simple metal? Why use chemical rockets? It's clearly an elaborate deception designed to make us abandon our rightful claim to this system. Lieutenant Corvex looked up from his station. Admiral, our long-range scanners are still detecting those massive energy signatures throughout the system. Whatever's generating them, it's far beyond our understanding. Sensor ghosts, Kethvar declared, though uncertainty crept into his voice. Or some kind of holographic projection. We are the Zeridian Empire, Commander. We have conquered 1,000 worlds with our superior technology and military might. These primitives cannot possibly possess capabilities beyond our own. He straightened his shoulders, decision crystallizing in his mind. Prepare a surgical strike. 1 antimatter torpedo, targeted at the lead vessel's engine section. When they see their flagship crippled, they'll abandon this charade and submit to Imperial authority. Commander Yextal hesitated. Sir, are you certain? If their claims about population numbers are even partially accurate, they're not, Kethvar snapped. No species could support 12 billion beings on a single world without destroying their ecosystem. It's physically impossible. They're clearly attempting to intimidate us with fabricated evidence. But sir, what if we're wrong? Kethvar fixed his subordinate with a stern glare. Commander, I have served the Empire for 3 centuries. I have witnessed the conquest of 50 star systems and the submission of dozens of alien species. In all that time, I have never encountered a civilization that could match Imperial technology. These humans with their metal ships and chemical rockets are no exception. He turned to the weapons officer. Lieutenant Mordex, prepare Torpedo Tube 1. Antimatter warhead minimum yield. Target the lead ship's engine compartment. Torpedo armed and ready. Admiral, open a channel to the human vessels. Captain Chen's image appeared on the main screen. Still wearing that strange expression the translator called a smile. Hello again, Admiral. Have you given some thought to our suggestion about moving your ships away from our survey area? Captain Chen, Kethavar announced formally. You have one final opportunity to surrender and submit to Imperial processing. Refuse and we will demonstrate the true power of Imperial technology. The human's smile widened. Oh, are you going to show us your weapons? That sounds exciting. We love seeing how different species approach engineering problems. Kethavar felt his confidence surge. These primitives didn't even understand the threat they faced. Fire torpedo. The antimatter weapon streaked across space, its energy signature bright enough to blind unprotected sensors. Kethavar watched with satisfaction as the torpedo approached the human ship's hull. The explosion was magnificent, a perfect sphere of annihilation energy that should have vaporized everything within a kilometer radius. But as the brilliant flash faded, the human ship hung in space completely undamaged. Ooh, pretty, came Captain Chen's voice over the communication link. Was that antimatter? Nice work on the containment field stability. We had trouble with that when we first started experimenting with antimatter. Oh, about 400 years ago. Kethavar stared at the tactical display in shock. The explosion had been perfect, yet the human vessel showed no damage whatsoever. Impossible. Nothing can withstand a direct antimatter impact. Well, technically you're right, Captain Chen replied cheerfully, but we didn't withstand it. We just redirected the energy into a pocket dimension for safe disposal. Waste not, want not, right? Pocket dimension? Lieutenant Korvex whispered. Sir, that's theoretically impossible. The energy requirements alone would what, Lieutenant? Captain Chen asked, somehow having heard the quiet comment. Oh, you're worried about energy requirements. That's adorable. Friday. Show them our power generation specs. The communication screen split again, displaying technical readouts that made no sense to anyone on the Imperial Bridge. Numbers scrolled past that exceeded theoretical maximums by factors of millions. Those are false readings, Kethavar insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. Admiral, our turn now? Captain Chen's tone remained friendly, but something had changed in her expression. We've been very patient with your little demonstration, but we really do need to get back to work. Your turn? Kethavar felt a chill run down his spine. The human ship, which had shown no signs of advanced technology beyond basic fusion power, suddenly lit up like a star. Energy readings spiked beyond anything the Imperial sensors could measure. The vessel's hull began to shift and flow like liquid, revealing underlying structures that defied every law of physics Kethavar understood. Don't worry, Captain Chen said. We'll keep this proportional to your antimatter torpedo. One demonstration shot, minimal damage. The human ship fired something that wasn't quite a projectile and wasn't quite an energy beam. Whatever it was moved faster than light without entering hyperspace, passed through the Eternal Glory's shields without triggering them, and struck the Admiral's personal quarters 3 decks below the bridge. The impact was surgical, precise, and absolutely impossible. A perfectly circular hole appeared in the ship's hull, passing completely through the vessel from one side to the other. Emergency bulkheads sealed automatically, but the message was clear. The humans could have destroyed the entire ship with the same ease. How? Kethavar whispered. Oh, that's just basic dimensional drilling, Captain Chen explained casually. We punch a temporary hole through several layers of reality and let physics do the rest. Very efficient. Minimal collateral damage. Though I should mention, we did evacuate your quarters first. Wouldn't want to hurt anyone. Evacuate my quarters, but no one entered my ship. Admiral, you really need to upgrade your internal sensors. We've had a repair crew working on your quarters for the past 5 minutes. Your environmental systems were about to fail, and frankly, your artificial gravity generator is held together with hope and spare parts. Lieutenant Korvex checked his internal sensors and paled.
Sir, there are 5 unknown life signs in Section 12.
They're repairing our systems. How did they get aboard my ship? Teleportation, Captain Chen replied matter-of-factly, though we prefer to call it quantum tunneling. Basic transportation technology. We've been using it for everyday travel for about 2 centuries now. The Admiral felt reality shifting around him. Everything he thought he knew about technology, about the Empire's place in the galaxy, about the natural order of things, was crumbling. "Your repair crew," he managed to say. "Why are they fixing our ship?" Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. "Because that's what neighbors do, Admiral. They help each other. Your ship is old and your crew is probably homesick. The least we can do is make sure your life support systems don't fail on the way back to Imperial space." "Back to Imperial space?" "Oh yes, you'll need to report this contact to your superiors, won't you? They'll want to know about us. Fair warning, though, they're probably not going to believe you." The Imperial Senate chamber on Zeridios Prime had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 1,000 worlds filled the massive auditorium, their voices creating a cacophony of fear, anger, and disbelief that echoed off the crystal walls. Senate Leader Vosthin stood at the central podium, her 6 arms raised for silence. The ancient Zeridian had overseen the expansion of the Empire for nearly 4 centuries, but never in her long life had she faced a crisis of this magnitude. "Order," she commanded, her voice amplified through the chamber's acoustics. "We will have order in this proceeding." Slowly, the noise died down as representatives took their seats. Admiral Kethvar stood in the witness circle at the center of the chamber, still wearing his dress uniform despite the long journey from the frontier. The repair work the humans had performed on his ship was flawless, better than anything Imperial engineers could have accomplished, but that only made his report more unbelievable. Admiral Kethvar, Senate Leader Vosthin, began formally. "You stand before this assembly claiming to have encountered a species that possesses technology far beyond our own. You assert that these beings have been secretly observing our empire for centuries, and that they possess the capability to destroy our entire civilization at will. That is correct." Senate Leader, a representative from the industrial world of Korak 7, stood up. "This is absurd. How can primitive beings building ships from raw metal possess such capabilities? The Admiral's ship was obviously damaged in some accident, and he has fabricated this story to cover his failure." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Kethvar had expected this reaction. He activated his personal holographic display, showing the recordings from his encounter with the human vessels. "These are the unedited sensor logs from my flagship," he announced. "They show clearly the antimatter torpedo impact, and the complete lack of damage to the human vessel. They also show the surgical strike that penetrated our shields and hull, without triggering any defensive systems." The recording played in holographic detail above the chamber. The assembled representatives watched in growing silence as the events unfolded. The human ship's casual deflection of antimatter, the impossible energy readings, the precise retaliation that could have destroyed the Imperial flagship but instead merely demonstrated their overwhelming technological advantage. Senator Kexmore from the military-industrial complex stood up, her scales flushed with anxiety. "If this recording is authentic, then we are facing an enemy that could destroy our entire fleet without effort. How many ships do these humans possess?" "Unknown, Senator. However, they claim to have colonies on 800 worlds with populations in the trillions. If their other claims are accurate, their military capability would be beyond our ability to measure." The chamber erupted in frightened voices. Representatives from border worlds began demanding immediate military protection, while senators from the core systems insisted the threat was exaggerated. Senate Leader Vosthin activated the emergency silence protocol, sending a low-frequency pulse through the chamber that compelled attention. "Admiral, you mentioned that these humans claim to have been protecting our expansion. Explain this assertion." Kethvar straightened his shoulders. "According to Captain Chen, humanity has been monitoring our empire for 2 centuries. They claim to have prevented 3 separate invasions from outside our galaxy, invasions we never detected. They also suggest that they have been deliberately managing our expansion to avoid contact with more dangerous species." "They're managing our expansion?" Senator Yithkar from the Exploration Fleet demanded. "The Empire bows to no external authority." "Senator, with respect, if their technological claims are even partially accurate, we may not have had a choice in the matter. Their ability to manipulate space-time at will would make it simple for them to redirect our exploration fleets without our knowledge." Dr. Zexilan, the Empire's chief scientist, activated his speaking crystal. "Senate Leader, I have reviewed the technical data from the Admiral's encounter. The energy signatures recorded are impossible according to our understanding of physics. However, the recordings are authentic. We must conclude that either our understanding of science is fundamentally flawed, or we have encountered a species operating on principles we cannot comprehend." The weight of that statement settled over the chamber like a funeral shroud. For 1,000 years, the Zeridian Empire had been the dominant technological force in their region of the galaxy. Their scientists had unlocked the secrets of hyperspace, antimatter, and artificial gravity. The idea that another species could render all their achievements obsolete was almost incomprehensible. "What do you recommend, Dr. Zexlin?" the Senate leader asked. "We need more information. These humans have clearly observed us extensively, but we know almost nothing about them. Their population claims suggest a civilization far larger than our own, but we have no data on their political structure, their intentions, or their true military capabilities." Admiral Mortex of the Border Defense Fleet stood up. "Senate leader, I request permission to mobilize the entire Imperial Navy. If these humans represent a threat to our civilization, we must be prepared to defend ourselves." "With what?" Admiral Kethvar asked quietly. "Senator, I have seen their technology in action. They redirected antimatter into a pocket dimension as casually as we might swat an insect. They repaired my ship's systems while we were still aboard, using transportation methods we cannot detect or prevent. If they wished to destroy us, we would not have the capability to resist." The chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. The Zeridian Empire, master of 1,000 worlds, controller of hyperspace lanes, conqueror of dozens of alien species, was helpless before these mysterious humans. Senator Vexa Quinn from the Intelligence Services activated her speaking platform. "Admiral, did these humans make any demands? Did they threaten our territory or our people?" "No, Senator." Captain Chen seemed more concerned about our interference with their scientific measurements than with asserting dominance. "They treated our entire encounter as if we were children playing games that adults found amusing." "Children," Senate Leader Voss then repeated slowly. "And what does one do with dangerous children?" The question hung in the air like a death sentence. If humanity saw the Empire as children with dangerous toys, how long would their patience last? How long before the galactic community decided that the Zeridian Empire had grown too dangerous to ignore? Dr. Zexlin spoke again, his voice heavy with the weight of scientific certainty. "Senate leader, based on the evidence presented, I must conclude that we are facing a Class Omega scenario." The chamber erupted in gasps and frightened exclamations. A Class Omega threat was theoretical, something discussed in war colleges and strategic planning sessions but never expected to occur. It represented a force so overwhelmingly superior that conventional resistance was not merely futile, but potentially suicidal. "Order," Senate Leader Voss then commanded. "Dr. Zexlin, are you certain of this classification?" "Regrettably, yes. A species with the demonstrated ability to manipulate fundamental forces at will, possessing transportation and communication methods beyond our understanding, and claiming protective authority over our region of the galaxy, meets every criterion for Class Omega designation." Senator Mordex from the Military Procurement Committee stood up, his voice shaking. "What does this mean for the Empire?" Senate Leader Vossathin looked around the chamber at the faces of representatives from 1,000 worlds, all looking to her for guidance in a situation that had no precedent in Imperial history. "It means," she said slowly, "that for the first time in a millennium, the Zeridian Empire is no longer the dominant power in our region of space. It means that our expansion, our technology, our very survival, may depend on the goodwill of beings we do not understand." She paused, letting the weight of that statement settle over the assembly. "It means we must learn to live in a galaxy where we are not the strongest species. And if Admiral Kethvar's report is accurate, it means we have been living in such a galaxy for centuries without knowing it." The Senate leader activated the emergency protocols that had not been used since the founding of the Empire 1,000 years before. "I hereby declare a state of galactic emergency. All Imperial fleets are to return to defensive positions. No expansion operations are to be undertaken without Senate approval. And may whatever gods watch over us have mercy on our civilization, because we may soon discover that our fate lies in the hands of beings who find our greatest achievements amusing." 3 weeks after the Imperial Senate declared a state of galactic emergency, the humans finally decided to respond to the frantic diplomatic messages flooding the communication networks. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, now orbiting Zeridios Prime as part of the massive defensive fleet that had assembled around the Imperial capital. Nearly 2 million ships from across the Empire had gathered in the largest military mobilization in galactic history. "Admiral," Lieutenant Korvex called from the communication station, "we're receiving a response to our diplomatic overtures." "From the humans?" "Yes, sir." The message is coming from everywhere. Kethavar frowned. Clarify, Lieutenant. Sir, the signal is being transmitted simultaneously from every star system within a 50 light-year radius of the capital. Our deep space arrays are detecting the same message coming from locations that should be impossible to reach in such a short time frame. The Admiral felt his scales prickle with anxiety. The humans were demonstrating their capability to communicate across impossible distances instantaneously. Another casual display of technology that rendered Imperial achievements primitive by comparison. Put it on the main screen. The holographic display activated, revealing not the bridge of a warship or the formal chambers of a government building, but what appeared to be someone's living space. A middle-aged human woman sat in a comfortable chair, wearing casual clothing and holding what looked like a steaming beverage. Behind her, large windows showed a view of space with what appeared to be an entire solar system that had been artificially rearranged for optimal living conditions. "Oh, hello there," the woman said cheerfully, waving at the screen. "Sorry about the delay in getting back to you. We've been having the most fascinating debate in the Galactic Management Committee about whether this counts as first contact or just pest control." She chuckled at her own comment, taking a sip from her cup. "I'm Director Elizabeth Harper, currently serving as the regional administrator for this arm of the galaxy. I understand you folks are a bit concerned about our previous interaction." Admiral Kethavar activated his communication system, trying to project authority he no longer felt. "Director Harper, I am Admiral Kethavar of the Imperial Defense Fleet. The Zeridian Empire demands to know your intentions regarding our territory and our people." Director Harper's eyebrows raised in apparent surprise. "Demands? Oh my, that's adorable. You know, it's been about 300 years since anyone tried to make demands of the Terran Republic. Usually species figure out the power dynamic a bit faster." She gestured toward the window behind her. "See that nice organized solar system out there? We moved all those planets into optimal orbital positions about a century ago. The star used to be a red giant, but we rolled back its stellar evolution to extend the habitable zone. Standard terraforming project, really. We've got about 12 billion people living comfortably in this system alone." The Admiral felt dizzy. They spoke of moving planets and controlling stellar evolution as casually as rearranging furniture. You moved entire worlds? Oh yes, gravitational engineering is basic civil engineering these days. Though I admit it was quite challenging when we first developed the technology. We accidentally turned Jupiter into a small star during our first attempt. Good thing we learned how to fix that sort of mistake." She laughed again, a sound that made the Admiral's combat glands release stress hormones. "But I'm getting off track. You were worried about our intentions, right? The Empire needs to understand what you plan to do with our territory." "Your territory?" Director Harper looked genuinely confused. "I'm sorry, Admiral, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. You don't have any territory. You have a designated play area." The words hit the Imperial bridge like a physical blow. Several officers made choking sounds, and Lieutenant Korvax actually fainted. "A play area?" Kethavar whispered. "Oh yes. The Galactic Gardening Committee set aside this region about 400 years ago as a protected zone for developing civilizations. Your empire, the Crystalline Hegemony, the Hive Collective, and about 30 other species get to practice building interstellar governments without interfering with the more advanced regions of the galaxy." She pulled up what appeared to be a holographic map of the galaxy, with various regions marked in different colors. "See, the blue areas are for species that haven't figured out faster-than-light travel yet. Green areas are for civilizations that have achieved basic space travel, but are still learning about interstellar politics. That's where you are. And the other colors? Oh, red areas are for species that have graduated to full galactic citizenship. They get to participate in actual governance and contribute to serious projects like galactic defense, reality maintenance, and dimensional stability. The yellow areas are quarantine zones for species that turned out to be problematic." Admiral Kethavar felt his worldview crumbling again. "Quarantine zones?" Director Harper's expression became more serious. "Well, not every species develops responsibly. Some become aggressive conquerors who threaten galactic stability. Others develop dangerous technologies without proper safety protocols. A few have tried to destroy reality itself, which is always awkward." She brightened again. "But don't worry. Your empire is doing quite well for a green zone civilization. You've only had 3 minor reality breaches, and you've never tried to weaponize time travel. That's actually above average." "Reality breaches?" "Oh, those hyperspace experiments your scientists conducted about 50 years ago. They accidentally poked some holes in the dimensional barriers. We patched them up before anything dangerous could leak through, but it was a close call. The Admiral stared at the human woman, trying to process the implications. You've been managing our development? Not managing exactly. More like gentle guidance. We redirect your exploration fleets away from dangerous regions, clean up after your more unfortunate experiments, and keep the really nasty things in the galactic core from noticing your existence. What sort of nasty things? Director Harper waved dismissively. Oh, reality-eating parasites, entropy demons, the usual cosmic horrors. Nothing you need to worry about while you're still in the green zone. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Between you and me, Admiral, your empire is probably ready for yellow zone status. You've developed some impressive technologies, and your military organization is quite sophisticated. But the committee is concerned about your tendency toward aggressive expansion. Aggressive expansion is our right as the superior civilization in this region. Director Harper burst into laughter, nearly spilling her beverage. Oh, Admiral, you're killing me. Superior civilization? You're adorable. You've barely figured out antimatter, and you think hyperspace is the pinnacle of transportation technology. She wiped tears from her eyes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at you. It's just that watching green zone species discover they're not alone is always entertaining. The reactions are usually so predictable. Predictable? Oh yes. First comes denial, then fear, then anger, then bargaining, and finally acceptance. Your empire is currently somewhere between fear and anger, which is actually pretty good timing. Some species get stuck in denial for decades. Admiral Kethvar looked around his bridge at the faces of his crew, all staring at the human woman who was casually dismantling everything they thought they knew about their place in the universe. What happens next? He asked quietly. Director Harper's expression became more sympathetic. Well, that depends on you. The Empire has two choices. You can continue playing Emperor in your designated sandbox, which is perfectly fine, or you can start learning enough to qualify for Red Zone citizenship. And if we choose citizenship, oh, that's a much harder path. You'd need to completely restructure your society, develop actual science instead of engineering, and learn to cooperate with species far more advanced than yourselves. Most civilizations find the transition quite humbling. She smiled warmly. But the benefits are substantial. Red Zone citizens get to participate in projects like building new galaxies, maintaining universal constants, and exploring alternate realities. Much more interesting than conquering primitive worlds, the Admiral felt something fundamental shift inside him. For 3 centuries, he had served an empire that he believed represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement. Now he was being offered the chance to discover what actual achievement looked like. Director Harper, he said slowly, how does one begin this transition? Her smile widened. Now that, Admiral, is exactly the right question. 6 months later, Admiral Kethvar barely recognized himself. The proud imperial uniform had been replaced by the simple gray robes of a student. His quarters aboard the human research station Curiosity were smaller than his old bathroom, but contained learning materials that challenged everything he thought he knew about science, mathematics, and reality itself. Professor Chen, he said to the young human woman who served as his primary instructor, I still don't understand how dimensional folding can create energy rather than consume it. Sarah Chen, daughter of the starship captain he had first encountered, looked up from the holographic equations floating between them. At 23 standard years old, she possessed knowledge that surpassed the greatest scientists in the Empire. Think about it differently, Kethvar, she said patiently. You're still thinking of energy as something finite that has to come from somewhere. But when you fold dimensions properly, you're not drawing energy from our reality at all. She manipulated the hologram, showing mathematical relationships that made Kethvar's head spin. You're actually borrowing potential energy from parallel realities where the same space contains different physical laws. The energy debt gets distributed across infinite dimensions, making the cost effectively zero. Kethvar stared at the equations, feeling the same intellectual vertigo he had experienced every day since beginning his studies. But that implies there are infinite realities with infinite energy sources. Well, yes, that's basic multiversal theory. We covered this in your first week. The former admiral rubbed his temples, feeling inadequate in ways he had never experienced during his military career. Professor, how long does it typically take for students from green zone civilizations to grasp these concepts? Sarah consulted her datapad. For basic dimensional theory, usually about 5 years. But you're doing quite well, actually. Most Imperial officers take longer, because they have to unlearn so many incorrect assumptions about physics. Through the observation window, Keithvar could see other members of his former crew attending their own classes. Commander. Yextal was struggling with elementary particle manipulation, while Lieutenant Korvex was learning basic reality mathematics from a human child who appeared to be about 12 years old. Professor Chen. May I ask you something personal? Of course. How old were you when you learned dimensional engineering? Sarah smiled. I started the basics when I was about 7. Most human children learn fundamental reality manipulation as part of standard education. We consider it as basic as reading or arithmetic. Keithvar felt a familiar wave of humbling realization, and yet it represents the most advanced theoretical physics in the Empire. Different perspectives, I suppose. Your Empire focused on conquering other civilizations, so you developed excellent military engineering. We focused on understanding the universe, so we developed science. Both approaches have their merits. She gestured toward the massive observation window that showed the galaxy beyond. Though I have to admit, your military organizational skills are impressive. Some of the project management techniques your officers have developed are quite elegant. Project management? Oh yes. The Galactic Protection Service has been studying Imperial logistics for decades. Your ability to coordinate activities across hundreds of worlds simultaneously is remarkable, even if the goals were somewhat limited. Keithvar blinked in surprise. The humans have been learning from us? Of course. Every civilization develops unique solutions to universal problems. Your empire might not have the most advanced technology, but your social organization is quite sophisticated. We've adapted several imperial administrative procedures for managing our larger colonies. For the first time since beginning his studies, Keithvar felt a spark of pride. I had assumed we had nothing to offer a civilization as advanced as humanity. Sarah looked genuinely surprised. Keithvar, advanced technology doesn't make us superior beings. We're just humans who happen to develop different solutions to the challenges of existence. Your people develop different solutions, and many of them are quite brilliant. She activated a holographic display showing various galactic regions. Look at this. Your empire's method of integrating diverse alien species while maintaining social stability? Remarkable. Most civilizations either fail at integration or suppress diversity. You found a balance that allows for both unity and individual cultural expression. The display shifted, showing comparative data. The crystalline hegemony in Sector 7 solved the same problem by turning everyone into identical crystal beings. The Hive Collective just absorbs other species entirely. Your approach is much more elegant. Keithvar studied the data, seeing his civilization from an entirely new perspective. So our methods have value even to red zone species? Absolutely. In fact, that's one of the reasons the committee thinks your empire might be ready for yellow zone status. You've developed social technologies that could be invaluable for galactic governance. A soft chime indicated the end of the study session. Sarah began packing up her materials while Keithvar continued staring at the galactic display. Professor, what would yellow zone status mean for the empire? More autonomy, access to intermediate technologies, and the opportunity to contribute to regional projects. You'd also get to interact with other developing civilizations as mentors rather than conquerors. She paused thoughtfully. Actually, there's a newly discovered species in Sector 12 that's just achieved faster than light travel. They're having trouble with aggressive neighbors, and the committee thinks Imperial officers might be ideal advisors for their defense planning. Keithvar felt something stir within him that he hadn't experienced since his military days. We could help protect a developing civilization. If you're interested. Though I should warn you, it would mean abandoning the conquest model entirely. The goal would be to help them develop their own strength and independence, not to absorb them into the empire. The former admiral considered this carefully. The idea of using imperial military expertise to protect rather than conquer was revolutionary, but it appealed to something deeper than his old desire for dominance. What about red zone status? He asked, and what would that require? Sarah's expression became more serious. That's much more demanding. Red zone species contribute to maintaining universal stability. They help manage reality itself. She gestured toward the stars beyond the window. See that region where the stars seem dimmer? That's where entropy is advancing faster than normal. Red zone species work together to slow that process and maintain cosmic balance. They also monitor dimensional barriers, prevent reality cascades, and occasionally have to deal with threats from outside our universe entirely. Outside our universe? Oh yes. The multiverse is full of things that would love to consume reality as we know it. Most of them are kept out by natural barriers, but sometimes those barriers need reinforcement. Kethavar felt his mind reeling again. And humanity handles these threats? Humanity and about 40 other red zone species. It's a collaborative effort. Though I have to admit, humans tend to get assigned to the really weird problems because we have a reputation for creative solutions. She grinned. Last year, we had to convince a sentient mathematical equation to stop trying to divide reality by zero. The diplomatic team ended up teaching it poetry instead of pure logic, which somehow solved the problem. The former admiral shook his head in amazement. How does your species remain sane while dealing with such cosmic responsibilities? Practice, mostly. And a really good sense of humor. You have to find the absurdity amusing, or the sheer scale of existence becomes overwhelming. As they walked toward the station's central hub, Kethavar saw other Imperial officers engaged in their studies. Some looked frustrated, others fascinated, but all wore expressions of people whose minds were being fundamentally restructured. Professor Chen, he said finally, I have one more question. Yes? When your mother first encountered our fleet, was she really amused by our threats, or was that diplomatic misdirection? Sarah laughed. The same infectious sound her mother had made months earlier. Oh, she was definitely amused. But not in a cruel way. It's more like, have you ever watched children playing war games with wooden swords? Completely convinced they're mighty warriors? I suppose so. That's how most of the galaxy looks to red zone species. Not stupid or inferior, just earnest and young and completely unaware of how much bigger everything is than they imagine. She patted his shoulder gently. The amazing thing is watching them grow up. Seeing a species like yours discover that they're part of something infinitely larger and more wonderful than they ever dreamed. That moment when you realize that what you thought was everything was actually just the beginning. Kethavar looked around at his fellow students, at the human instructors patiently teaching impossible concepts to minds that had never imagined such possibilities existed. For the first time since childhood, he felt truly excited about the future. Professor, he said, how long do you think it might take for someone like me to qualify for red zone citizenship? Sarah considered the question seriously. For you personally? Probably about 15 years if you really apply yourself. You have good instincts and you're not afraid of having your assumptions challenged. And for the Empire as a whole, that's harder to predict. It depends on how willing your people are to fundamentally change their approach to existence. Some civilizations make the transition in decades. Others take centuries. A few never make it at all. They had reached the observation deck where massive windows showed the galaxy in all its glory. But now Kethavar knew that what he was seeing was just one layer of a reality, so complex and beautiful that his species had barely begun to understand it. 15 years, he mused. It seems like a long time, Sarah smiled. Admiral, you're about to discover that 15 years is barely an instant when you're learning to maintain infinity. But don't worry, the journey is the best part. As Kethavar stared out at the stars, he realized that for the first time in his long life, he wasn't thinking about conquest or control or dominance. He was thinking about discovery, about growth, about becoming part of something so much larger than himself that his old ambitions seemed as small as a child's toys. The Zeridian Empire would continue to exist, but it would become something new, something better, and maybe in time it would earn the right to help guard the infinite wonders of existence itself. The galaxy was safe, had always been safe, and would continue to be safe in the hands of species who understood that true strength came not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to protect and nurture the endless miracle of reality itself.